Try to remember your great-great-grandmother, not a photo, not a name on paper, an actual memory, something she said, something she did, something that made her real. You probably can't. And in 3 more generations, someone will fail that same test about you. That's not a metaphor. It's a measurable pattern. Sociologists call it the 3-generation rule. You are likely remembered in some real, personal, specific way by your children and grandchildren. Stories get told. A voice gets imitated at dinner. A joke gets repeated. But by the time your great-grandchildren are adults, you've usually become a name on a family tree, if that. Not a person, a data point. This isn't about being forgotten because you didn't matter. It happens to almost everyone, presidents included, in the specific personal sense. We remember facts about historical figures. We rarely remember them the way the people who actually knew them did. There's a name for the moment this becomes permanent. Researchers who study oral history sometimes call it the second death, the point when the last person who personally knew someone dies, taking every remaining first-hand memory of that person with them. After that point, whatever remains, letters, photos, second-hand stories, becomes the entire record. Nothing new can ever be added again. This has actually been measured. Linguists studying dying languages have documented cases where a single elderly speaker was the last living person who remembered a specific word, a specific song, or a specific story passed down through their family. When that person died, researchers weren't just losing data. They were watching a second death happen in real time, the final disappearance of a specific, personal version of an entire lineage of people that had already been fading for generations. So where does the personal version of you actually live while it lasts? In the early 1900s, a French sociologist named Maurice Halbwachs proposed something that unsettled a lot of people who read it. He argued that memory isn't a private, internal thing you own inside your own skull. He called it collective memory. His claim was that even your most personal memories are shaped, held together, and made meaningful by the social groups you belong to. Halbwachs didn't survive to see how relevant his theory would become. He died in a concentration camp in 1945. But his core idea has held up remarkably well in modern psychology. Here's what that actually means for you, specifically. Right now, there isn't just one version of you. There are dozens. Your mother carries a version of you built from decades of specific moments only she witnessed. Your closest friend carries a completely different version, built from a different set of moments, filtered through a different relationship. A coworker carries a thinner, more limited version. A stranger who once held a door for you carries almost nothing at all, maybe a single half-second impression that's already dissolved. None of these versions are the real you. They're all real, and none of them are complete. This is where things get strange, and where the science backs up something that sounds almost mystical. Psychologist Daniel Wegner spent years studying something he called transactive memory. His research found that close relationships, romantic partners, old friends, long-term coworkers, don't just share memories. They divide the labor of remembering. One person remembers dates, the other remembers names. One remembers where things are stored, the other remembers how people are feeling. Over years together, couples and close friends build an external memory system distributed across 2 brains instead of one. Wegner's research showed something remarkable happens when that system breaks. When a long-term partner dies or a close friendship ends, people don't just lose companionship. They lose access to entire categories of information and memory they'd outsourced to that other person for years. Studies on grief and cognition have found that people report genuine, measurable confusion and memory gaps after losing a long-term partner, not from sadness alone, but because part of their actual working memory system, the other half of the loop, is simply gone. You are quite literally running part of your memory on hardware that lives inside other people's heads, but even the versions that survive aren't fixed, they drift. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent decades demonstrating that human memory isn't a recording. It's a reconstruction, rebuilt slightly differently every single time it's accessed. Not a file, a rewrite every time it's opened. Her research found that memories can be altered, merged with other memories, or even partially invented, simply through the act of retelling them, especially when someone else's version of the story gets blended in along the way. This means the version of you living inside your mother's memory today isn't a fixed file sitting untouched in storage. It's being quietly re-edited every time she thinks about you, shaped a little by mood, by recent events, by whichever memories happen to be easiest to reach that day. None of the versions of you were ever static to begin with. They were always slowly rewriting themselves. Now let's actually run the thought experiment properly. If everyone who currently holds a version of you forgot you tomorrow, all at once, what would actually be lost? Your physical body would still exist. Your own memories would still exist, at least the ones your own brain has stored. But every external anchor point, every place where a piece of you was being held in reserve, in case your own memory ever failed, or in case you needed someone to remind you who you were during a hard year, would be gone instantly. Every inside joke that only made sense because two people remembered the same afternoon. Every story about you that only exists because someone else was there to witness it and chose to keep retelling it. Every small correction to your own memory, the version where your sister remembers what you were actually wearing, or your old roommate remembers what you actually said, that keeps your self-story from drifting too far from what really happened. All of that runs on other people's brains, not yours. This sounds bleak. It might actually be the opposite. There's an obvious objection here, and it's worth taking seriously. What about everything digital? Photos, text messages, old voicemails, years of posts. Doesn't all of that preserve the personal version of you, independent of whether any specific person remembers you correctly? Partly, but researchers who study digital memory have found an important limit to this. A photo can preserve what you looked like. A text thread can preserve what you said. Facts, yes. Feeling, no. But neither one preserves the living, evolving relationship that made those details meaningful in the first place. The tone of voice a person would have used remembering it, the specific feeling attached to that memory, the way it connected to 50 other moments only that person had access to. Digital records store facts about you. They're much worse at storing the felt version of you, the personal version that only existed inside someone else's ongoing relationship with you. A stranger scrolling through your old messages after you're gone would learn things about you. They wouldn't actually know you, in the way the person who received those messages once did. Because if identity is this distributed, this shared, this dependent on people outside your own skull, then you're never actually as alone or as fixed as you feel. You are being continuously built and rebuilt by everyone who holds a piece of you. Your identity isn't a fortress you defend by yourself. It's closer to a shared structure, under constant, quiet maintenance by a whole network of people who have each agreed, without ever saying so out loud, to remember a small part of you correctly. This also explains something people have reported for centuries without any scientific language to describe it. The strange, disorienting grief of losing touch with someone who knew an old version of you. Not because you miss the person exactly, but because a specific version of yourself, the one only they remembered how to reflect back at you, quietly stops being accessible the moment they're gone from your life. So here's the honest answer to the original question. If everyone forgot you existed tomorrow, you personally would still be alive, still conscious, still functioning. But dozens of distributed versions of you, each one real, each one slightly different, each one built collaboratively over years by people who chose to keep remembering, would disappear permanently and all at once. That's not a small loss. It's closer to dozens of small extinctions happening simultaneously, none of them visible from the outside, because your body would still be standing right there afterward, which means the opposite is also true and worth sitting with. Every time you remember someone, actually remember them, a specific story, a specific voice, a specific detail nobody else bothered to hold on to, you are keeping a piece of them alive in the only place a person can actually survive past their own memory. Not in a photo. Not in a name on a tree. In you, being the one who still remembers.